Leo, a seasoned street thief, had been watching Damien for days. A young CEO with an air of confidence, Damien was the perfect target for a pickpocket, and Leo was confident in his skills. As Damien walked down the street, lost in his thoughts, Leo made his move. His hand slid into Damien's pocket, but before he could retreat, Damien spun around, catching him by the wrist. Leo expected to be handed over to the police, but to his surprise, Damien only smirked and let go. "You've got quick hands," he said. "How would you like a deal instead of jail time?" Intrigued and curious, Leo listened as Damien offered him a chance to work as a consultant on his company's security systems. Damien saw potential in Leo's street smarts, and Leo saw an opportunity to enter a world of wealth and power he'd only dreamed about. Skeptical but intrigued, Leo agreed. What started as a chance to escape his old life turned into something much more complicated. Leo's first day at Urban Tech was unlike anything he'd ever known. The polished floors, sleek office spaces, and expensive gadgets seemed like another world to him. As he navigated through the corporate environment, he kept a low profile, observing the people around him. Damien was a sharp and calculating leader, and Leo quickly realized that the CEO had a different type of power, one rooted in strategy and influence. Damien wasn't just playing a game of business, he was winning it. While Leo worked, he started to pick up on subtle cracks in Damien's persona. The CEO wasn't just driven, he was guarded, almost to the point of being cold. There was something hidden beneath the surface, something Leo was determined to figure out. He was starting to respect Damien more, but he also knew that working with a man like him wouldn't be without challenges. This partnership was only beginning, and Leo couldn't shake the feeling that it was bound to get even more complicated. Damien began to give Leo more responsibilities, testing his ability to navigate the world of corporate espionage. Leo's street instincts were invaluable when it came to bypassing security measures, but the deeper he got involved in Damien's world, the more conflicted he felt. He was no longer just an outsider looking in, he was a part of something much bigger, and it wasn't always easy to reconcile. At first, Leo took the work at face value, but the longer he stayed, the more complicated it became. One evening, Damien took Leo out for drinks after a particularly successful job. They spoke casually at first, but the conversation turned more personal as the night went on. Damien spoke of his family, how he'd inherited the company after his father's sudden death, and how he had always been expected to be the perfect heir. It was a side of Damien Leo hadn't seen before. Despite his wealth and power, Damien carried the weight of expectations and loneliness. Leo, ever the skeptic, didn't know how to respond. For the first time, he saw the man behind the CEO, and he was surprised by what he saw. Damien assigned Leo his first big test, infiltrating a competitor's facility to gather information on a new product. It was a risky move, but Damien was confident in Leo's abilities. Leo, however, was torn. He was used to pulling off small-time heists, not corporate sabotage. But his curiosity about Damien's world kept him from backing out. With every move, Leo relied on his street smarts, using his skills to bypass security systems and blend into the high-tech environment. The mission was a success, but Leo couldn't ignore the sense of unease that settled within him. He had done it, but the stakes felt higher than ever. As they left the facility, Damien gave him a nod of approval. "You did well," he said. But Leo could see the cold calculation behind his eyes. For Damien, this was just another day in the office. For Leo, it felt like stepping further into a world he wasn't sure he wanted to be a part of. After a particularly grueling mission, Damien and Leo found themselves alone in the office late at night. Leo, feeling more comfortable with Damien now, let his guard down, asking more personal questions. Damien hesitated at first but then opened up about the pressures he faced, both at work and in his personal life. He revealed that the facade of being a cold CEO was a defense mechanism, built to protect himself from the constant demands of running a billion-dollar company. Leo listened, realizing that beneath Damien's polished exterior, there was a vulnerable man who had been shaped by loss and responsibility. It was the first time Leo saw Damien as something more than just a powerful figure in a suit. He was human, and that made Leo reconsider the assumptions he had made about him. The walls between them had started to crack, and Leo felt a stirring of something he hadn't expected, empathy. Damien's rivalry with Julian, another ambitious CEO in the tech world, escalated when Urban Tech launched a new product that threatened Julian's market share. Leo quickly became involved in the undercurrents of corporate sabotage, spying on Julian's activities and reporting back to Damien. However, the longer he worked in this high-stakes game, the more he realized how dangerous it had become. Julian wasn't just a competitor, he was a threat, one who wasn't afraid to play dirty. As tensions rose, Leo found himself walking a thin line. He was no longer just a street thief trying to make a quick buck, he was part of a war between two powerful forces. Julian's spies began tailing Leo, and it became clear that the stakes were higher than ever. The game had changed, and Leo was in deeper than he had ever intended to be. Still, his loyalty to Damien kept him from backing down. Leo's old life started calling to him once again. His former gang members, sensing an opportunity, began to reach out, trying to pull him back into the fold. They needed his skills for a big job, one that could make them all rich. Leo was torn between his past and his present, unsure of where his loyalty should lie. He spent hours contemplating the decision, knowing that any wrong move could bring disaster. During a quiet moment with Damien, Leo saw a rare vulnerability in him. Damien revealed how isolated he felt, how the constant pressure of leading a company left him with few people to trust. It struck Leo how similar they were, two men, both driven by ambition, both carrying burdens they couldn't share with anyone else. For the first time, Leo realized that his connection with Damien was more than just business. It was something deeper, something that might make him reconsider his old life. Leo's past came knocking one night when his old gang showed up, demanding he help with a heist that could set them all up for life. They weren't taking no for an answer, and Leo had to make a choice. As tensions escalated, Damien appeared out of nowhere, stepping in to rescue Leo. "I'll deal with them," Damien said coolly, his voice calm but firm. Leo watched in stunned silence as Damien held his ground, making the gang back down. Leo, shocked by Damien's unexpected intervention, was left to reconsider everything he thought he knew. It was one thing to be Damien's employee, but it was something else entirely to be protected by him. Despite the confusion and his deep-rooted trust issues, Leo couldn't help but feel a strange warmth spread through him. This wasn't a simple business deal anymore. Damien wasn't just a CEO, he was someone who would risk everything for him. Leo's connection to Damien began to deepen, but so did the pull of his old life. The gang's pressure weighed heavily on him, and they didn't let up. When Leo was offered a new role in urban tech with more power and a higher paycheck, it felt like the perfect escape. Yet, the thought of abandoning his old crew lingered in his mind. It wasn't just loyalty anymore, it was guilt, and it gnawed at him. One evening, as they worked late, Damien noticed Leo's distraction. "Something on your mind?" he asked casually, but his gaze was sharp. Leo hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. "I've got people depending on me," he said quietly. "I don't want to let them down." Damien raised an eyebrow, his lips quirking in a half-smile. "I thought I was the only one you had to worry about now." It was a light-hearted moment, but the weight of Leo's choice loomed between them. For the first time, Leo felt like he was choosing not only between two worlds but between two parts of himself. Damien approached Leo with a plan that would take their partnership to the next level, an elaborate heist against a rival company. The stakes were higher than ever, but Damien's calm confidence made Leo consider it seriously. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about proving his worth, not only to Damien but to himself. He would have to dive into the heart of corporate espionage, something he had never imagined before. As the heist plan unfolded, Leo couldn't shake the feeling that Damien was hiding something. The whole thing seemed almost too perfect, too well-timed. Despite his gut feeling, Leo went along with it, masking his doubts with humor. "If this goes wrong, at least we'll go out with style," Leo joked as they prepared for the job. Damien, ever the strategist, smiled faintly. "You always know how to make me laugh, Leo." But behind Damien's smile, Leo couldn't escape the nagging thought that trust was becoming a dangerous game. The night of the heist arrived, and Leo couldn't help but feel the adrenaline coursing through his veins. This wasn't just about money or power, it was about proving that he could succeed in this new world he'd been thrust into. They snuck into the competitor's office under the cover of darkness, Leo's street smarts complementing Damien's meticulous planning. Everything went according to plan, until they were almost caught. In the chaos, Damien's calm demeanor faltered for a moment. For the first time, Leo saw him truly stressed, and it was a side he hadn't expected. "We've got to move," Damien urged, his voice urgent. Despite the tension, Leo couldn't help but grin. "Not the most graceful heist, but we pulled it off." It was a moment of humor that lightened the mood, but as they escaped, Leo felt the growing realization that their relationship had just become far more complicated. They were in this together now, for better or worse. The aftermath of the heist left Leo feeling uneasy. Damien seemed colder, more distant, as if something had shifted between them. As the days passed, Leo's suspicions grew. He began to notice discrepancies in Damien's stories about his company's dealings, and little things that didn't quite add up. Was Damien being honest with him, or was he just another pawn in a larger game? One evening, Leo confronted Damien, demanding answers. "You've been hiding something, haven't you?" Leo's voice was sharp, his distrust evident. Damien sighed, clearly tired, and leaned back in his chair. "I never wanted you to know this side of things," he said softly. "But now, it seems you're part of this mess too." The air between them crackled with tension, but it was then that Leo understood something deeper. Trust, once broken, was hard to rebuild, but it wasn't impossible. They would have to work through this, together. Leo's trust in Damien was shattered when he discovered that Damien had been using him all along to manipulate rival companies. The realization hit like a punch to the gut. Everything they'd shared, the laughter, the moments of intimacy, the near-death escapes, it had all been part of Damien's strategy. Leo felt betrayed, and the pain of it was almost too much to bear. With a heavy heart, Leo confronted Damien in a heated argument. "Was any of this real?" he shouted, the words laced with hurt. Damien, looking pained, responded quietly, "Yes, Leo. It was real. But I had no choice. I needed you." Despite the betrayal, Leo couldn't help but feel a flicker of understanding. They both were trapped in a game they didn't fully control. But whether their relationship could survive the wounds of betrayal remained uncertain. After the confrontation, the tension between them was unbearable. Leo kept his distance, retreating into his own mind, unsure whether he should walk away or stay. Damien, for his part, gave him space but continued to reach out with small gestures, a thoughtful text, an unspoken apology in his eyes whenever their paths crossed. It was subtle, but it didn't go unnoticed by Leo. Finally, one evening, as the city buzzed outside, Damien found Leo alone. "I'm sorry," he said simply. "I've never been good at trusting people, but you made me want to change." Leo met his gaze, feeling the weight of his words. After a long silence, Leo replied, "I don't know if I can forgive you, but I'm willing to try." It wasn't perfect, and the road ahead was still uncertain, but in that moment, Leo realized that love wasn't about perfection. It was about trying, even when it was hard. The next few weeks were full of quiet moments of understanding and small steps toward healing. They worked together on projects, with Leo's street smarts complementing Damien's strategies. There was no more deception, no more games, just two people trying to make something work. But trust had to be rebuilt, piece by piece, and neither of them could rush it. One day, as they worked late into the night, Damien looked at Leo with a smile that was rare and unguarded. "You've made me rethink everything," Damien admitted. Leo chuckled softly. "I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing," he teased, but there was warmth in his tone. It was a moment of intimacy, where the walls between them had all but disappeared. For the first time, they felt like equals, and maybe, just maybe, that was enough. Affection. As their partnership deepened, so did their affection for each other. They began to share more than just business ideas. They shared their hopes, their fears, and the kind of intimacy that only comes with true connection. One evening, after a particularly long day, they sat on the balcony of Damien's penthouse, watching the city lights flicker below. Leo, usually guarded, found himself laughing freely, enjoying Damien's company like he never had before. Damien, in turn, seemed more relaxed, less the corporate mogul and more the man who had once been a young man with dreams and fears just like Leo. Their conversations shifted from business to personal, and for the first time, both men felt a sense of peace. Their affection was quiet, unspoken at times, but undeniable. The trust that had once been broken was slowly mending, and they both realized that what they had now was worth fighting for. As time passed, their connection grew deeper. Leo found himself falling for Damien in ways he hadn't anticipated. What had started as a business arrangement, a means to escape his old life, had evolved into something much more meaningful. He noticed the small things, the way Damien's eyes softened when he was focused on something important, the subtle gestures of care that only Leo seemed to notice. One evening, after a long day of negotiations and meetings, Damien opened up again, speaking about his past in more detail. "I never let anyone get too close," he admitted, a flicker of vulnerability in his eyes. "It was always about control, about not being hurt." Leo, moved by his words, took a step forward and gently placed a hand on Damien's. "You don't have to keep doing everything alone," he whispered. In that moment, they both understood that their relationship was more than just partnership. It was about healing each other's scars, both old and new. Just when things seemed to be settling into a rhythm, a situation arose that tested their bond. A rival company offered Leo a deal, a lucrative offer, promising him a life of luxury if he helped them sabotage Damien's business. The temptation was overwhelming, and for a moment, Leo found himself at a crossroads. His old instincts urged him to take the money, to escape the emotional complexity of his connection with Damien. Late one night, Leo stood at the edge of the rooftop, weighing his options. Just then, Damien appeared, his presence calm yet intense. "I know what they offered you," Damien said quietly. "And I know what you're thinking." Leo turned to face him, heart pounding. "I'm not sure I can trust myself anymore," Leo admitted. "I don't know if I can do this." Damien took a step closer, his hand resting on Leo's shoulder. "Trust me," he said softly. "And trust yourself. I'm not going anywhere." In that moment, Leo realized that the bond they shared was stronger than any temptation, stronger than the pull of his old life. As they continued to work together, the layers of their relationship peeled back, revealing even more hidden truths. Leo learned more about Damien's past, especially the loss of his parents and the responsibility he had carried for the company. It became clear that Damien's cold exterior was a defense mechanism, a way to keep the world from seeing his pain. Leo, in turn, opened up about his own struggles growing up in a rough neighborhood, about how he had learned to survive by using his wits. The more they shared, the more they understood each other. They were two people, both shaped by hardship, both trying to find a way to navigate the complexities of their world. One evening, as they sat in Damien's office, the silence between them was comfortable, full of mutual understanding. Damien reached across the table, his hand brushing Leo's. "I didn't think I could ever trust anyone again," Damien confessed. "But I trust you." Leo's heart swelled, and without thinking, he leaned in and kissed him. It was soft, a gentle affirmation of everything they had become. Their relationship, while growing stronger, faced its most significant challenge when a major scandal hit the company. A former employee had leaked sensitive information to the press, and it seemed like the whole corporate world was turning against Damien. As the media frenzy escalated, Leo found himself thrust into the spotlight as well, forced to defend Damien and the company he had grown to care about. The pressure was immense. Damien, usually composed, seemed on edge, his usual confidence faltering under the weight of the situation. Leo, ever the survivor, stepped in to help Damien navigate the crisis, using his street-smart instincts to calm the storm. In the chaos, their bond was tested yet again. "I'm not sure I can do this," Damien confessed one night, his voice raw with frustration. Leo pulled him close, offering reassurance. "We're in this together. We always will be." It wasn't just about surviving the crisis anymore, it was about facing it as a team, trusting in each other's strength. With the scandal beginning to subside, the company's reputation slowly started to recover. But the damage to Damien's psyche was deeper than anyone realized. The pressure of leading a corporation, coupled with the betrayal he had suffered, had left him exhausted and disillusioned. Leo became his anchor during this time, offering both emotional support and practical help. They spent more quiet nights together, where Damien would allow himself to relax, showing Leo a side of him few had ever seen. Despite the challenges, their relationship began to flourish. They worked together not only to rebuild the company's image but to rebuild their own sense of self. "You've taught me to trust again," Damien said one evening, his voice sincere. "And I'm grateful for that." Leo smiled, his eyes softening. "We're both learning," he replied. The walls that had once separated them were now gone, and they were finally building something that was more than just business. It was a partnership, a bond forged through struggle, trust, and love. Just when it seemed like they were on the verge of stability, a shocking revelation came to light. Someone inside Damien's inner circle had been orchestrating the leaks. It was a person Leo had come to trust, and the betrayal stung deeply. The anger Leo felt wasn't just for the company, it was personal. This was someone who had betrayed Damien's trust, and by extension, Leo's as well. Damien, however, took the news with surprising calm. "We'll deal with it," he said, his voice steely. "Together." Leo couldn't help but admire Damien's ability to remain composed under pressure. He had learned a great deal from him, and now, it was time for him to return the favor. As they confronted the traitor, Leo felt a deep sense of connection to Damien, not just as a partner in business, but as someone he could trust with his heart. As the weeks passed, Leo and Damien found themselves alone more often, their bond growing stronger with each passing day. Despite everything they had been through, there was one thing they had never fully addressed, the depth of their feelings for each other. One evening, as they sat in silence, Leo finally spoke the words that had been weighing on his heart for so long. "I love you, Damien," he said quietly, his voice filled with raw emotion. Damien, for once, was silent. His usual composure was gone, replaced by something softer, more vulnerable. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Damien looked at Leo with tears in his eyes. "I love you too," he whispered. It was a simple confession, but in that moment, everything changed. The years of struggle, the deception, the misunderstandings, it all faded into the background as they shared a moment of pure, unspoken understanding. They were in this together, for the long haul. With their love finally acknowledged, Damien and Leo looked toward the future with renewed optimism. The company was flourishing once again, and their personal lives had found a new balance. They continued to work together, but now, it was no longer just about business. They were building a life together, one where love and trust were the foundation. One afternoon, as they walked hand in hand through the city, Leo looked up at Damien and smiled. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" Damien nodded, squeezing his hand. "We've been through the worst, and we're still standing." Leo grinned. "And I think we're stronger for it." It was a simple truth, but it felt like the beginning of something beautiful, something that would last for the rest of their lives. Their journey was one of peace and fulfillment. With their company thriving and their relationship stronger than ever, Damien and Leo had created a life together that neither had thought possible. They had learned the true meaning of trust, love, and sacrifice, and most importantly, they had learned to trust in each other. As they stood together on the balcony of Damien's penthouse, watching the sunset, Leo turned to Damien with a soft smile. "We made it," he whispered. Damien smiled back, his eyes filled with love and pride. "Together," he said, pulling Leo into a warm embrace. They had come through the storm, and now, they were ready for whatever the future held. Forever together, they knew they could face anything.